thank my dear friend, the governor, the lieutenant governor, our dear friends and allies in the General Assembly that have stood with us, Senator Tara Durant, Senator Mark Peake, Senator Timmy French, Senator Luther Cyphers, Senator Danny Diggs, Delegate Paul Milday, Delegate Gary Higgins, Delegate Wendell Walker, Chad Green, Delegate Tony Welk, Delegate Joe McNamara, Delegate Tim Griffin, our great leader Todd Gilbert, and Secretary of Education Ann Gradera. Thank you all for standing with us today on this important day. Every day I walk into this remarkable building named after a remarkable woman, Barbara Johns, who, in the face of incredible resistance, stood up and did the right thing. I'm so honored by these legislators and these young women behind me willing to stand to do the right thing. Today we gather in support of HB 1809 and SB 749. It's legislation that upholds fairness, enforces safety standards, and protects the athletic opportunities for women and girls. For over 50 years, Title IX has worked to level the playing field, ensuring that women have equal opportunities in education and in sports. But today, tragically, those hard-fought victories are being jeopardized, making the legislation today introduced in the General Assembly that much more necessary. If I was to tell you even 10 years ago that it would be necessary to legislate that biological males should not be playing on women's sports teams, I would argue almost nobody in this room would actually believe this would be necessary. But alas, here we are. No one understands how necessary this is better that so many of the incredible athletes that have their testimonies are with us today, some of which are standing behind me. Consider the story of Kylie Awans, who is forced to dress in a utility closet to avoid sharing a locker room with biological males. Virginians watched as our own Emmett Wyatt, an Olympic silver medalist, be denied her gold medal at the NCAA championships by a biological male. Another athlete, Rika Gorky of Virginia Tech, lost her opportunity to compete in the same finals for the same reason. As Roanoke College swimmer and runner Susanna Price said after a biological male joined her swim team, quote, "I have two younger sisters who, like me, are multi-sport athletes, and I never want them to experience this heartache. The thought of competing against a biological male sends the message that women aren't worthy and that we don't actually matter." Yes, you do. So many of these women, these stories I just mentioned to you, and some of the women standing behind me, what they've also experienced standing up has been unimaginable. The rarest trait we find in our society today, I'm convinced, is courage. What they have faced doing the right thing and speaking out for their fellow athletes has led to them being ostracized on social media, remarks and harassments by their professors, and oftentimes a belittling, condescending attitude from those in the media. Thank you for showing that courage. We know that there is a party that claims they're the party of women. However, it is deafening their silence for the women that are desperate to have a voice. Well, we have heard your voice. On behalf of Governor Youngkin, the Lieutenant Governor, myself, and these legislators, we are honored to be your voice. Because you have had young athletes like Peyton McNabb and Candace Wynn from my home area of Virginia Beach, who's been seriously injured when competing with biological males. Let me be clear, the science is not up for debate. Yes, let's trust the science. Biological males who have undergone puberty have a clear physical advantage over female. They jump higher, they run faster, they hit harder. These are not opinions. These are undeniable facts. Males who have undergone puberty have an undeniable athletic advantage. They jump 25% higher than females and throw about 25% further. Males run approximately 11% faster and accelerate 20% faster. They punch 30 to 162% harder. They are approximately 30% stronger than females of equivalent stature and mass. Men have taken hundreds of victories from women in competitions they should have never entered. And each of those victories, each of them, represent a lost opportunity for a woman, a dream deferred or a dream destroyed. So I urge all Virginians, no matter what your political persuasion, to join us in this fight. Parents, coach, athletes, and attorneys, your voices matter, and together we can assure that fair. Keep breaking the records. Make them listen. You stand on the shoulders of a generation of women who have fought for the rights you have today. And so I urge the General Assembly to pass this legislation because our daughters deserve the same opportunity to succeed as our son. Now, somebody that has been the embodiment of courage, that has faced unimaginable hostility for speaking out for the truth, somebody that has had seen this heartbreak firsthand from her own journey as one of the top Division I swimmers in the country, a multiple SEC champion, who now has used her experience into an incredibly powerful advocacy platform, becoming the face and voice of this movement at this time. Thank you, Ms. Riley Gaines, for being such a role model for young girls and inspiring all of us to stand up for fairness, equality, and integrity in women's sports. Please welcome Ms. Riley Gaines.
I bet you guys feel a little bit silly that you just gave a standing ovation to a person for merely saying men and women are different. That's it. But very grateful to be here. I want to start by thanking the people who stand beside me today. Their leadership on this issue, especially Attorney General Miyares, has really set the precedent for the rest of the nation to follow. AG, he was one of the first to ultimately sign on to a lawsuit suing the Department of Education and the Biden administration over their illegal administrative rewrite of Title IX, which we saw just last week was victorious as a federal judge in Kentucky vacated this radical rewrite nationwide. So we thank you for your leadership. Speaking of what's going on from a federal standpoint, this comes after this press conference this morning. It comes after what we saw yesterday in Washington, D.C. I was at the Capitol for the passage of H.R. 28, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. I just want to run through a couple of the things I heard, and I'll tell you why that's important in a second. We watched the theatrical performances, because that's what it was, from Democrats on the House floor, who rather than calling this bill what it is, again, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, they called it the Child Predator Empowerment Act. Let me help this make sense to you, and maybe in the process I can help it make sense to myself. The Democrats' whole messaging tactic, all 202 who voted in favor of this, their messaging tactic was to say that preventing men from going in women's locker rooms and flashing themselves non-consensually would unleash child predators on the girls. If you're speechless, so am I. We watched as the Democrats said things like, this bill will require genital inspections. It's going to require internal and external anatomy inspections. First of all, that's not true. Don't believe the fear-mongering and the lies. If you ever want to know what the left is up to, just look at what they're accusing the right of. Right? It has nothing to do with that. It would resort to a birth certificate or a routine physical, which as an athlete, I can tell you, you have to even be able to play in sports. I heard things like, this bill is a waste of time. And that's why I say this, because that is the exact thing I heard when I testified for the first time ever in Virginia 2 years ago, 2 legislative sessions ago. It was my first time testifying. I will never forget how nervous I was. How I look back at my statement before being here today, how apologetic, I'm ashamed to say that, how apologetic I was in my testimony. Apologizing for feeling the violation that I felt, for feeling humiliated undressing next to a 6'4" man, for feeling as if I was in the wrong to believe, for daring to question this out loud. And I will never forget how I was treated by the Democrats in the state of Virginia. how they told me it didn't really matter. It's a fringe issue. It's such a small percentage. This isn't really happening. They allowed this to happen. Understand what happened to those girls at Roanoke College, what happened to Reka George at Virginia Tech. It's because of the lack of leadership from the Democrats here in the state of Virginia. I'm here to tell you, to echo AG's message, that women matter. I matter. These girls who stand on the steps behind us, they matter. Your daughters, they matter. Virginia Women's Sports Act, introduced by Delegate Oates and Senator Mulcahy, would ensure women and girls fairness, safety, privacy, and equal opportunity across the Commonwealth. It recognizes common sense and is based on the foundation of objective truth that men don't belong in women's sports. You heard here we have Stand With Women champions in Virginia, A.G. Miyares, Delegate Oates, Senator Mulcahy, Delegate Tata, of course the Lieutenant Governor, Governor Youngkin here. They are models, like I said, for the rest of the country and what true leaders look like. Very grateful for this opportunity. I will do whatever I need to do to ensure this is done in every single state across the entire nation. And so thank you all. Looking forward to, hopefully, the swift passing of the Women's Sports Act here in Virginia.
She's fantastic, and I get to follow that. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm Dolores Oates. I represent House District 31 in the House of Delegates, and I am honored to be among you today. This is an incredibly important legislation, and I'm so glad to see the interest in making Virginia's women and girls, in making sure that Virginia's women and girls have a fair chance to compete in sports. It's especially poignant that we're discussing this legislation today because earlier this morning, my legislative assistant back in my district gave birth to a healthy baby girl. This bill doesn't just aim to protect the female athletes now, it also strives to ensure that protections last for our daughters being born today. I want to be clear, this legislation is not about taking away opportunities. It's about making sure that women and girls are able to thrive and compete in sports and that they have protected spaces to do it. Our responsibility as legislators is twofold on this issue. One duty we have is to create a system where sports can be played by male and female athletes on a fair level playing field that takes into account both men and women athletes' wonderfully unique abilities. The second responsibility we have is that when we create that system, we must ensure that women and girls have protected spaces where they feel and know they are safe and supported. My ultimate goal with this legislation is to provide that space for each individual athlete to have a safe, supportive environment where they can reach their highest potential in their chosen athletic field. This legislation does that, and I am proud to patron it along with my fellow delegates, Delegate Tata and Delegate Early. Now, I want to introduce Senator Tammy Mulcahy, who is my partner in this effort. Senator Mulcahy.
Thank you very much. I'm Senator Tammy Mulcahy. I represent the 9th District in the Virginia Senate. I'm very honored to be here. I'm very honored to carry this legislation in the Virginia Senate. I'm proud to be here with my friend Winsome Sears, the amazing governor, and my long friend, our amazing Attorney General, who's been championing this fight, and I'm very proud of him for that. You'll hear about male athletes' physical differences, which cause safety concerns when they compete against female athletes. This is not a concern that might happen. This is a concern that does happen. When my daughter was in high school, she had to compete on a co-ed soccer team. She was a very good soccer player. The reason that she had to do that was because they did not offer a women's soccer team in her high school. And she was being considered for scholarships for college for her soccer ability. And she was tackled in a game, I believe it was her junior year, by a male athlete that was much larger and stronger than her, and she tore her ACL. Well, she never played soccer again, and she did not get a scholarship. I realize that this is a sensitive issue, as some choose to identify with a gender different from their biological sex. These same individuals will come to committee and they'll come before the Senate and they will argue that they want the same opportunities as everyone else. Well, I firmly believe that you shouldn't take away opportunities from the women who have worked long and hard to have their own rights. So as I've been thinking about women and their rights, I decided to do a little research to see what Jane Fonda had to say about the issue. I mean, why isn't she and all the women who marched, burned their bras in the women's rights movement of the 70s, why aren't they up in arms? Why aren't they up in arms about the invasion of men in women's sports? You know, they marched, they did all the things. I just thought they would really be upset about men invading women's sports. But it seems Jane's just interested in climate change these days. So lastly, and most importantly, the reason I fight this battle, and I will continue to fight this battle, are for little girls like my 7-year-old granddaughter. She's very athletic. She's the only girl out of my 6 grandchildren. She's very athletic. When her mom tried to sign her up for ballet, she says, "I'm not doing that. I'm a baller." I want to keep her safe, whether she's on the court or the field. I want her to have every opportunity to achieve her full athletic abilities. I want her to be able to compete against other girls and women, and I want her to have every opportunity for athletic scholarships based on those hard-earned skills. And I hope the House and the Senate, and I hope this will be a bipartisan issue. We just need to protect our girls and our women and get this done this year, because this should not be a partisan issue. This is just the protection of our girls and our women, and we need to get this done. Thank you for having me. And now, my beautiful, amazing friend, Lieutenant Governor Seals.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Serena Williams, as you know, is a top tennis player, to say the least, said this: men's tennis and women's tennis are completely two separate sports. So if I were to play Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0 in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. It's true. It's a completely different sport. The men are a lot faster. They serve harder. They hit hard. It's just a different game. I only want to play girls, she says, because I don't want to be embarrassed. Imagine that. This, my friends, is from Serena Williams, and let me be more specific, a woman who has won 39 major titles. And if she is telling us it is not the same game, men and women, then we ought to believe her. In fact, I can tell you that when I was in the Marine Corps, as some of you know, when I was in my platoon, in basic training, there were 70 of us, females. There were only so many stalls, and we only had an hour to take a shower. And we did the best we could, which meant there were going to be about 5 or 6 of us in a shower. You can imagine then what would happen if we had males in the showers with us. the esprit de corps would be ruined, our training would be gone, we would not have a military. That's what we're talking about here. But you see, I chose that. We have much younger women. We have girls in sports, biological women, and they need to be protected. This shouldn't be that hard. I don't understand why it's so controversial that we want to make sure that women have their own sport so that they will have the opportunities that we fought for, that our grandparents fought for, that my aunts and uncles fought for. As I said, my policy is this: don't make my life any harder than it already is. And that means common sense. What is the common sense thing to do? Right now, we are relegating our girls, our young women in sports to the number 2 and the number 3 slot. You can forget about number 1. And increasingly, we are seeing our young women, our young girls on the podium in the bronze position. Pretty soon, ladies and gentlemen, they will have no position. Is that what we have fought for? As the first female lieutenant governor of our great Commonwealth of Virginia, I have broken a glass ceiling. It was not broken to repair it after me, and so that there is not another biological woman. We must understand what we're doing. This is about the future of our daughters. I want you to picture this with me, that you are the runner, and you are at the starting line. You're at the blocks, and you look down the blocks, and you see 4 biological males in your sport. Folks, we're talking about muscles. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, excuse me, ain't no way. There is no way I can win. Because you see, these are the biological males who previously ran in the men's division. And they were possibly number 3, 4, or 5. But when they come to the women's division, they are number 1, 2, 3. How, my friends, could that be equality? The equality I hear the other side always espouses. So, common sense must prevail. Common sense must prevail. We cannot say that enough because we don't see enough of it. And so, as we look to the future, we've got to understand that these ladies are to be commended. You are to be commended. How you have suffered for the truth. And I want to introduce someone who helps us to stand for the truth. You've already heard from him, and that is my friend, our great friend, our Attorney General, Jason Miyares. Thank you.
Fantastic. You know, as our great Lieutenant Governor noted, and I kind of whispered to Riley, when she, as a 12-time SEC champion, when she tied with her opponent, when he had competed as a man, he wasn't even in the top 100, not even the top 200, not even the top 300. To give you a perspective of what happened. And even with that, Riley still tied this individual, which shows so much about her athletic ability. But there may be some questions here about why we need this legislation. I would just say this to show you how relentless this agenda is. I remember early on as Attorney General, my staff told me they came in and were involved in different litigation with the federal government, which is interesting. But they said, listen, we may have to be involved in litigation over the USDA. I said, well, why would we be involved in that? They said, well, they administer the school lunch program for poor, needy children. I said, I support that. Why would we be involved in litigation with that? I said, well, the Biden administration has a new twist. They said if you're a school district that accepts federal assistance to provide school lunches for poor, needy children, you also have to accept their new definition of what it is for transgenderism, which is biological males on women's sports teams and in women's locker rooms and in overnight trips. It would affect over 90% of the school districts in the country. They would tie assistance to the poor to have this completely new definition that nobody would even contemplate back when Title IX was enshrined. And so as Riley Gaines noted, I'm so grateful for what we have done so far, but what we need to do is enshrine it in Virginia law. Now what I would say is you have a governor that has stood up for women's sports from day one, not only with his model policies, but also he has pledged that if this comes to his desk, he will sign it. Please welcome His Excellency, the Governor of Virginia, my dear friend, Glenn Youngkin.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for taking time out of your immensely busy schedules and coming to launch an awareness campaign, but also a collective effort to protect women's sports. It's that simple. And we must do this together. I want to thank our Attorney General. I want to thank you for not only your kind introduction, but your steadfast leadership on this critical issue. And the bottom line is that when the Attorney General helped lead a multi-state coalition to protect Title IX from fundamentally misguided policies out of the Biden administration, he stood for us. He stood for Riley. And he stood for these amazing women standing behind me. And I want to thank all of you for standing. I just want to be clear. This issue is about protecting women and girls' rights. This issue is about fairness. And this issue is about safety. And I have to say, Suzanne and I have one amazing daughter. We have 3 boys. We love them all. But I worry about my daughter's safety. I want people to treat her fairly. We pray for all of them every day. But I have to say, if my daughter had to compete against biological males in sports, I would be angry about fairness. I would be angry about the violation of her rights that are supposed to be protected under Title IX. But I would be fearful for her safety. And that's a parent's heart. And that's the heart that we see beating so strongly as we come together to protect women's sports. I want to thank Riley for your courage. I know that you didn't sign up for this. You were competing with your God-given talents, with everything that you have. A Kentucky Wildcat, who, by the way, is from Tennessee. You figure that out. And boy, did she compete. As the Attorney General said, 12-time All-American. And yet, in 2022, she had to compete against a biological male. And she won. And yet, she did not receive the gold medal. What message are we sending to women and girls around this nation when we say you work as hard as you possibly can, you give everything you've got, you take advantage of those God-given natural abilities, and yet we are going to deprive you of what you have earned? My friends, that is just wrong. And so here we stand with a group of women and girls. We stand unified that your dreams should have the opportunity to be realized. Your dreams should be held on a pedestal. Your dreams need to be protected. Because in today's world, your dreams can otherwise be ripped away from you. I want to thank our Lieutenant Governor for her strong words. The idea that this glass ceiling that has been shattered would be reconstructed right behind is so fundamentally counter to everything we know to be good and right and true. And now we have the opportunity with the leadership of our General Assembly members here, the leadership of delegates and senators who are willing to step forward and say, we can put this right. Sports is important. Sports teaches us so much. I have to say, I was on a losing college basketball team. But I learned more about life. I learned more about teamwork. I learned more about, yes, how to be a gracious loser. But my friends, that is something that we cannot rip away from women and girls in this nation. We must stand for every single one of their opportunities to experience that elation of giving everything you've got and then leaving it to the competition to decide who won. That elation to stand with your teammates and give together everything you've got and to share in each other's successes and to work together to be better, to end the losses. This is life. This is sports. And I look forward to signing a bill when it comes to my desk, when we all stand together to protect women's sports. God bless you. And thank you.